All right, Cam. So as we're sitting here and you and I have known each other for quite some time and we're both kind of shit stirrers in our own right, but you made a Facebook post a couple of days ago and it seemed to rub a couple of people wrong. And while don't necessarily want to go down the call it direct road of that, I think generally it was really throwing some stones at business coaches and coaching in general. So would love to add a little more context maybe to that. And it's a great spot to just start our kind of hangout today.
Yeah, definitely. First off, Facebook posts. Oh my goodness. You never know how they're going to go.
You
Um,
you always have like half of yours. I'm like, man, I got to respond to this. This is a good one. Or, oh, I can't wait to fire my employee that's been with me for 3.5 years.
Amen to that. We'll talk about that one later. I think someone told me a long time ago that if you're the type of person that can evoke emotions through posts, like people want to talk to you, whether they're agreeing or disagreeing, you're winning. So I always kind of like take it with a chip on my shoulder when I post a thought. I know there are people that disagree with me, and we don't really live in a time where people scroll by anymore. It's like everybody feels entitled to let you know how they think and let you know that what you're thinking is wrong. So, my Facebook page is a good time. If you're ever just bored and want to like go through the comments, I have like really close friends who they don't even really comment on my stuff anymore, but like I hang out with them and they're like, Cam, I spent like 2 hours scrolling your Facebook posts and reading these things.
I
Um,
I would agree. Facebook is definitely a place to come hang out with you and have some fun. Uh, just got to make sure though, it's about articulating and arguing a point, not necessarily taking something personal, because there's plenty of people that go down that road.
Yeah, and I think that like in general with the Facebook statuses when people take it personally, something that I've learned is that it's not necessarily what I'm saying is wrong. It's a very big like self-reflection of an experience they've had. So with the business coaching post, I simply posted that if you're making under $15,000 a month, like revenue, you really shouldn't be paying more than $500 a month for a business coach. And a lot of people disagreed with that passionately, and decided to weigh in on that, which is fine. Like, I'm one of the types of people, I love hearing other perspectives, and I will always put that out there. People are like, oh, you just post to argue. But actually, that's not true at all because a lot of what I post is truly how I believe. And then when people respond, I've changed my thought process after having some intelligent conversations with people. But after the business coaching one, I will say that I am more firm in what I said than before I posted it.
I mean, so I'd love to clarify because I am a business coach, right? So
Mhm.
there is very much an opportunity for me to get offended by this and be like, Cam, you're wrong. You need this coaching or else. And how do you expect to grow to 15K if you don't have a coach, right? Like I could see all those comments happening. Um, but I'd love to maybe clarify a little bit. So you said until you're making $15,000 a month consistently, you shouldn't be paying more than maybe $500 a month for some type of coaching or mentoring services. Is that 500 a month? Is that I commit to $6,000 and I pay it in payments of $500 for a year? Like, give me a little more details around kind of what you mean with that. Unpack it a bit.
Yeah, so I guess I should just like kind of clarify because people are confused. Number one thing that I see, I'm a nutrition coach. I have been blessed to network with hundreds of nutrition coaches in the couple of years that I have been one. And one of the pain points that I hear from my peers who eventually like quit the industry that they love so much is that they made a bad financial decision, and the majority of those bad financial decisions that they made was paying for a business coach before they were ready and before they had an understanding of profit margins and doing the boring work. And it was kind of like they got like baited and hooked on, oh, if you pay me now, we'll get you to where your revenue is where it should be, that this isn't a big deal to invest in, and things like that, which I don't ever think should be the case. And it was really funny because one of the comments on that was, well, would you just tell a nutrition client that you're not going to coach them because they don't know how to track macros? And I was like, actually, yes, we don't take nutrition clients on that don't have a basic understanding of tracking macros into our high ticket one-on-one level program. We designed a low ticket, affordable program that they can jump into, learn, get the basics down, get the foundations down, have that knowledge, have us to ask questions to, but not with the same financial investment as one on one coaching because they're not ready for one on one coaching. And that's literally what the post was. I'm glad that someone commented that because that's what the post is really about. There's so many people that I talk to and they'll reach out and they'll be like, "Oh, Cam, I remember you from this. Like, I'm thinking of purchasing this to get started so I can end up having my business be to where yours is, where you have a COO and you're freaking able to like afford all this stuff." And I have told all of them, like, do not buy that first. Try this method instead. And how, like, the organic things, the low ticket, boring work things that you don't want to do is literally what you're going to pay way too much money to hear that you need to be doing. So, like, instead, just like dial it back, continue to like coach some people for free, make some people happy. Don't feel like you're killing yourself because your profit margins are totally screwed by paying someone way too much money to tell you to do this stuff. And then once you actually get to like the problems that a real business has when you have real income and you need to like learn to expand or learn different marketing techniques, then you kind of invest into a higher level of business coaching.
Yeah, that completely makes sense to me. And I think, obviously we have I'll call it company A, in common. So if you've listened to my other podcast, we refer to it as company A. But, and this isn't a negative or a positive against it, but there's been a lot of stories around the I paid this and I didn't get my result. 90% of those stories is because people simply didn't do the work. And I will say that there is a lot of times where, all right, hey, the question has to be asked, did we deliver the information well? Did they understand the information? Did we make it foolproof? Did we hold their hand? Like all these things that, again, every coach's, business's decision on how they want to handle it. But you have to ask those questions of, were they done to help that person? And if you answer yes to all of them, then sure, like the person didn't do the work. But that all too often is the reason success isn't achieved. Sometimes it doesn't work for you. You as the attractive character doesn't work. You and the people you want to serve doesn't mesh. They don't have the money you need to make it work. Like there are reasons. But I think you're right on the fact that a majority of times people just don't get the work done that they have to. I mean, this morning I actually had a sales call for my coaching business, and the woman's like, "All right, what's my next best thing to do?" And I'm like, "Well, you already told me for you to make more money so you can afford things, you should just fill out the paperwork that you didn't fill out yet. Like, I, you don't need to hire me to tell you to fill out the paperwork that you already told me you need to do." And she's like, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right." And I'm like, "Go fill the paperwork out, make a few more dollars, and then call me back in 30 days." And like, A, are you willing to do the work you have to do? B, make a little more money so it's not straining your bank account to get the coaching, because then you're not going to do the right thing anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like totally understand from not only like being someone who was with company A, which honestly, company A for me was amazing, but I executed. And I also did it intelligently because I had you who put me on a hot seat and I didn't have to put any money down to invest to get the like lower level ticket things to learn how to set up my business so then I could afford business coaching when it financially made sense. So I like, company A, people have this to say and that to say. And I understand that a lot of people like jump into it and don't want to do the work because they think it's like a guaranteed way. But when you have such a huge surplus of people being like, I thought I was going to get this when I paid this, you have to then look back at your messaging. And this even goes down for nutrition coaches, right? Like I have had years in the space now, and there have been strings of times where I've onboarded a bunch of people and none of them have done the work that needed to be done. And I had to step back and mature a little bit. Younger Cam probably wouldn't have admitted this, but here I am doing it on a podcast, and realize that I was the constant. It was me. It was the messaging that I ran, the promotion that I ran, but I was the constant as to why this surplus of people wasn't achieving the result that I told them they would achieve if they gave me some money. And at some point, we have to be grown enough to like look back, and we can't just deflect it. Like, how successful would I be if every freaking lady that reached out to me for nutrition coaching was like, I can't lose weight, nothing is working? And I was like, that's because you're not doing the work. I wouldn't have any clients. But yet in the business coaching world, for some reason, you're allowed to charge like a ridiculous ticket price on a program. And then when multiple people are like, hey, this isn't working for me, I'm doing it and it's not working, you're allowed to be like, you're not doing it right. And that's what I have a problem with, because sometimes it isn't that they're not doing it right. It's that the messaging and the outcome that you promised for a lot of freaking money isn't something you could back up. And we got to like reel it back and be like, hey, I think that business coaches should just have a thing. Like, I tell my people this all the time, like in nutrition coaching, like, I cannot guarantee your outcome unless you follow this plan 100%. And that's cool with nutrition because it's science based. But in the business coaching world, where it is relationship based and marketing based and lead based, I don't think any single business coach can give a guaranteed outcome like that. Like, hey, I guarantee you I will get you to 15K. You can't guarantee that. Even if they do everything you say, you can't guarantee that they're going to be able to like be charismatic enough to get that people from their content. You can't guarantee that they're going to be able to like, just, it's too much because it's relationship based and not science based. And that's what I think is bullshit about the business coaching world, because I've seen so many great coaches who wanted to help other people make a bad choice, pay for business coaching, try to do it, do everything every coach said, and still not make it, and then end up having to pay off a stupid loan and go back to work in a job they hated. And that's what I think needs to end.
It's it's unfortunate, and obviously things like guarantees are marketing tactics, right? And
Yeah.
oh, I'm guaranteed to create success. And the hard reality is you need to not make guarantees on things that you can't control. Now, you're hedging your bet, and oh, they're not going to do this 9-step list of things, and majority of the time they don't. Because there's always that one that's like, hey, at midnight on this day, you got to streak down your street completely naked and take a video of it, and that's how you're going to get the attention. It's like, I'm not doing that. Like, there's
Yeah.
always that one thing, I feel like. But um and I do think guarantees are useful, but they need to be worded appropriately, and that's part of the thing. And if it doesn't work at the end of the day, like you said, if you collect your data, which you should be collecting data, looking at your numbers and making sure all things from finances to NPS scores, success rates, confidence scores, etc., are all being collected and you're looking, then you should be able to know, like, all right, well, hey, 78% of the people that come into my thing achieve the outcome.
Yeah.
All right, why do the 22% not? And again, if a majority of them, they literally don't do the work, then hey, high rate of confidence, go put some guarantees behind that thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and you don't know what's going on and you can't back it up and all that stuff, then all of a sudden it's like, man, are you truly doing what's right for them? um and that's the hard part, because it doing what's right for people, it takes a little longer to be successful, because you got to go through more people to make sure they're the right fit. To your point, you could probably have more one-on-one clients if they knew the basic level of, call it, nutrition that you need them to know to be successful in your one-on-one. But turning some of them away means you're turning some money away, and
Yeah.
not everybody wants to do that.
No. And it's even hard. Like, it took me a long time to get to a place where I turned away clients that I really wanted, that were like trying to pay me for one on one coaching. But I just knew that because of my track record and because of tracking numbers, the people that weren't successful were those ones. So for a while, like, we just turned them away. But then we like developed something for them that was much more accessible, much more their level, still going to help them get to where they need to be, whether that was being successful on their own after that course or joining us. But it wasn't like a total loss. I think that really what the problem with a lot of people is that like we're all just kind of muddy money hungry. We're greedy people, and it's like such a human nature. And it's funny because I go through spurts where I'm like super money hungry, and I can see it the way I like set up my day, how my interactions go are much different. And I'm at a point where, like, when I feel that coming on, I like just need to take a step back and be like, why did I start doing this? And then usually, like, the universe will send me like an awesome message from a former client being like, hey, I'm still doing great. And it was because of you. And then I'm like, ah, that's why I'm doing it. But I feel like very rarely our business coaches like asking the right questions when someone reaches out to them for coaching. Like I have yet to sorry, meet a coach who's like, what are you making each month now? What are you paying for your services? Do you have like there's very little like financial finding unless it's related to wanting to finance one-on-one coaching with them. Like it's not about the business. Like when they if someone reaches out and is like, "Yo, I'm going to pay you however much you ask me to pay to like get to where you are." Almost every business coach is like, "Let's do it. You're onboarded." And it's just like kind of shady, kind of not that great. And I wish at some point that the business coaches would just come out and say that they realize they're like that. If one coach would be like, you know what? Sometimes I am money hungry and I don't make the best choices, I'd be like, that's a coach I'll hire. He's being honest because sometimes I'm money hungry and I don't make the best client choices. And then I'm like, crap, I really need to like reel this in and I have to do extra work because this person wasn't ready for coaching and I should have just turned them down. But very rarely do business coaches decide to do the extra work when they've made the wrong choice by onboarding the person that wasn't ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, you bring up the point of spending a certain amount of money. So whether intentional or not, your suggestion is to spend 3% of your top line revenue on these coaching services, roughly. I think it's 515,000 is like 3.33% or something.
Now,
And when I think through that, I'm like, yeah, that's a wise investment early on in your career. So flip that on its head and you start thinking like, all right, well, if I'm making 10 grand, that means I can spend $300, right? And we now need to start, well, what can I find on the internet, which is a vast place with a lot of information, for a couple of $100 that's going to help me solve my next problem. And one of my mentors, the thing that he taught me was just in time learning. And for that concept helped me a lot because I always had this big like, I need to figure out how to do that thing way over there. Oh my God. And I'm like, well, you still got step 1 to 99 to solve before you even get there. Which, by the way, if you solve 1 to 99, you're probably going to be better equipped to do step 100 when you get there because
yeah,
you'll have learned along the way. And it highlights the idea that we go down and we get caught up in this whole do your next 7-figure month, do your 6-figure month, talk to 8-figure business coaches, and we get sold this dream of 100K, $1 million, $10 million, which are big buzz numbers that are out there. It's the same thing. Nutrition coaches lose your next 20 pounds, 50 pounds, and people do that to attract the attention. And now all of a sudden you're tied to is that outcome,
yeah,
which has to come quickly versus going down the road of step 1 through 99 before the outcome of step 100 is really there. And that's, again, marketing tactic. I understand why you do that. But there's also those just real conversations that probably need to happen along the way at some point in time.
yeah. And like there are great coaches out there. Obviously, I probably wouldn't be talking to you on this podcast if I didn't know that there are coaches out there that really do want to help and make it accessible and are in it for the right reasons. And by no means am I trying to put every business coach down because that would be silly. Because I honestly wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't have coaching and have someone teach me. And the point of having a business coach or a mentor is so they can pretty much tell you how they got to where they were maybe successful in it, or like what they know about it, and then you can surpass where they got. Like, that's the point. You're always supposed to like surpass your mentor, is how I look at it. And I think that there are people out there who genuinely want to help, but I do think there are also, on the buyer's side, a lot of people that just want the instant gratification, which is why they fall for the gimmicky marketing stuff. And it's why they get in over their head. So I'm like a very honest person. I try to keep it like blame on both sides. Like, there are a lot of people who don't even understand profit margins, don't really understand that gross revenue coming in isn't what you made in a month if you have a 6-month contract with these people, and you need to figure that out. I know who taught me that one. And things like that. And like, but they don't understand it. So they have all this money and they're like, oh, I can afford this coaching. And then when they start the coaching, they're like, shit, I actually couldn't afford this coaching. And now I have to like try to redirect it, but I'm like maxed out. And then I got to add an assistant coach, like they're saying to do. And then I'm maxed out again, which I just wish people were doing, like learning profit margins and like how to actually look at what you're making and like look at it for what it is, because that was something that I learned from a mentor. That was probably the most valuable piece of advice that I ever learned. Like, hey, Cam, maybe you brought in 30, 40K this month. Cool. How long do you have to work with the people you signed? And it's like, in my head, it was all of a sudden like, oh, I didn't make that in a month. I have to divide this by the length of their contract. And then I have to take taxes and fees out. And then I have to pay my tax guy because I don't want to go to jail for tax fraud. And then I have to do all of this. And at the end of the day, 30K a month sounds really great. But when you look at it, you don't have that much left over. And I'm a frugal business person. So my profit margins are great. And then, like, it's just this whole chain of things. And I think everybody hears it, doesn't understand it, foolishly spends. And then there's less people trying to help people in the world because they made a bad decision slash got kind of like shitty marketing and like fell for it. Like, however you want to say it. At the end of the day, I just think we should all like be trying to help. Like, and if we're not truly trying to help, and if we don't truly care if the people we're bringing in are at the place where they need to succeed, like, I feel like there should be like a reset button that we can push, and all the people that don't want to help just have to like get flushed out. Like,
I wish. I wish there was one of those buttons because I'd jam on that thing all the time really hard. Just continue pushing that button. Oh, that's funny. So moving on kind of from this topic, but before we do, what's what would you say, like, hey, if you could go learn one thing around running your coaching business, what's that one thing? And then maybe another tip that you might suggest people who are newer and looking for that coach, that mentor, that whoever in their life might be, just so again that person who is striving for more kind of has a place to go look or somewhere to start from, so they're getting something out of this.
yeah. Number one thing, if I could give someone a tip to learn, this is a tough one. I would say know what you want and where you need to be happy. A lot of the amazing coaches I know are super, super successful and have ridiculous profit margins every month and are working 24/7. They are stressed out. They have too many staff members, whatever, because they came into an industry where a business coach told them more money, more money, more money. And they kept chasing those numbers. And then with that became more work. And a lot of them who I've kind of watched go through this journey are now at a place where they're trying to get back to less people, less staff, less like bigger profit margins. So you're keeping your take home. And I think what would prevent that for happening to a lot of people is seriously just like, before you start all this, find your numbers. Find your numbers, find what you need to make, how long it needs to, like, you need to make it, like how many hours a week you want to be working, how many clients you seriously want to serve. So like you're happy with what you're doing, because you can have all the freaking income coming in the world, but if you're not keeping hardly any of it to the point where you're working 80 hours a week, like, guys, I hate to break it to you, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to work 80 hours a week. There's like like there's no way about like around it. Like I don't care, like you're going to have 80-hour work weeks for a while to get to where you want to be, to not have those. So at least make it so those 80-hour work weeks are, you're happy with it, with clients you like, and you're keeping the majority of that money. You might not have time to spend it in the beginning, but eventually you will. So I think that is really huge, just like knowing what you need to make and not just like entering these programs where they're going to keep moving the target for more and more revenue, and then you just become miserable.
Fair,
Yeah.
fair. So, speaking of guarantees, we're gonna leave the coaching space a little bit and talk about I'm gonna jump into politics a little bit here. Um, and there's a lot of guarantees made by politics in general. And this is not meant to go down of this road of who are we each voting for, who do we like and who do we dislike, but maybe just, your thoughts around, call it politics in general. And I also would like your take on how the political climate maybe impacts us, and how much you think it does, because there's a lot of stuff on the news. The market does this, the politicians say that, promise is one of those things, it didn't happen, one of those things happened, one person's a criminal and that person is whatever, right? There's all that stuff flying around, and I think that there's people out there that let, at least in my opinion, it impact their day to day too much,
Way too
when
much.
the reality is the promises, the guarantees. I mean, I'd be curious how many guarantees were made and actually happened on the other side of things, like in history. I know it's not 100%. It's probably closer to 0% on the, you know, likely to happen or not scale. But just like thinking through that too, and your take on that side of things, I'd be curious.
Yeah, well, I'm from South Carolina, so y'all can make the assumptions on which way I tend to lean. But I am also a very big free thinker, and there are policies on both sides that I either like or don't like. Something that I think is literally the death of us and relationships and everything, our country, is that we are a very divided two-party system. And there are too many assumptions made, like, if you want to own a gun, you must be a Republican. And if you support abortions, you must be Democrat. And I think that's bullshit. I think that's the biggest problem. And then to kind of like touch on that, the like cancellation of people that maybe have different opinions than you is what is causing our world to further and further regress and become less of a united country, especially via social media. Like, you post the wrong thing, social media, you get messages like, I'm leaving, I'm unfollowing you, bye. Like, Jesus, like, sorry, I didn't even know, like, I couldn't express my feelings. But like, that is ridiculous to me, because I always kind of look at it like, I want to be in a room, and in that room I want to, one, definitely not be the loudest or smartest voice, and I want to be surrounded by people that think incredibly different than me. And I want to be able to hear all of their perspectives and all of their reasons, because believe it or not, and if my husband's listening to this, he's going to laugh, I'm not always right. I am not always right. But if I surround myself with a bunch of people who only tell me I'm right and only think exactly like I do, how would I ever learn if I was wrong, or change my mind about something, or see a different perspective? So I think that the hugest mistake that we make, with politics and anything in general, is that we no longer have civil conversations that don't involve name calling and like being like, oh, you think like that, you're an idiot. Oh, you think like that, you're a friggin' murderer. Like, oh, like, you want to control my body, like whatever it is. Like, it just becomes name calling instead of like actually just like hearing each other out, being civil, and like learning a different perspective and understanding why, although you still might not agree with that person, like, it's okay to be like, yeah, I don't agree with what you're saying still, but I understand why you would feel that way and why you might vote that way or support that policy. And like, people are allowed to have different opinions without having to like hate that other opposite opinion. Like, it's just so ridiculous. Like, I have never seen it so bad. And it's like, I'm 37. And I remember being younger, just starting to vote. And I voted for multiple different parties my whole life, just to throw that out there. I've bounced back and forth. Um,
I didn't
I,
know, like, my first time voting, it wasn't about the parties, it was just like, "Oh, I think I like this person," and no idea about policies, no nothing, I just liked the person. I'm pretty sure I've voted, yeah, multiple times on both sides.
yeah. And it's like, that's totally fine. And also back then, even nobody asked who you were voting for. I remember going and nobody asking, nobody caring, nobody being like, well, if you voted for this person, you better unfriend me. Like, and stuff like that. Like,
Your
come
your your
on,
inner South Carolina really comes out
y'all.
when you play that role.
It's just like so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. There is not one other circumstance in our entire lives where we would feel it was normal and acceptable to just cut people out of our life if they thought differently than us. I'm pretty sure there are people that like are very strong against you like discriminating against people based on their thoughts if they're different than yours. But yet we start talking about politics and it's like, nope, if you're not voting for my party, you're out. I don't even care what you're saying. You're an idiot. And it's not even a conversation anymore, which is the biggest disservice that I feel like anybody can do for themselves and like for their own intelligence levels.
Yeah, it's, the perceived personal attack because you don't agree with me is the issue, and I don't know this to be true or not, but I look at my daughter, right? And my daughter's way to communicate with everybody is like sticking her face in her phone.
Yeah.
And then when she actually has to talk to somebody, all hell breaks loose because she has no clue how to go down that road of just good communication. And I see some of these similarities where people who hang out on social media all day don't know how to have a conversation because it's just this, you've not done it for so long. And I also think like the who you voted for and all that, like that feels like also like, oh, did you get your vaccine, and everything there,
Oh,
and going down that road for COVID. And it's like, no one ever asked me if I got any of my, like, my tetanus shot. Like, now all of a sudden I don't know. I don't know. Did you did you get your vaccination and your for your STDs? Like, tell me, like, what's going on? Like that's the stuff. And my wife when she listens to this is gonna kill me for saying that out loud. But literally that's what I wanted to say to people, because like, you shouldn't ask me that because I'm not asking you that. Like, were you ever pregnant? Like,
yeah.
like, like. So it just, I think the world is forgetting how to have real communication. And to your point, do I love when somebody disagrees with something I wholeheartedly believe in? Of course not. But it's also because it's uncomfortable. With growth is uncomfortable and change, and through those conversations, again, like you said, you'll almost always learn something, which is the thing so many people are missing out on. And I feel like the world, or at least America or whatever, the people I get to interact with, we're not getting smarter. Just
No, people are getting so dumb. Like, I'm sorry, the lack of intelligent life out there is just like diminishing. Like every new freaking show release or something. I don't know what it is, but it's sad. It's terrible. And like it's so crazy how like I stopped watching the news probably around 2020. Um
mhm.
and it's been amazing for me for my mental. Like I still research things and make sure I'm up to date on just like the actual policies, but like finding like an unbiased source is getting more and more difficult. I think the level of journalism is even more unprofessional than it has ever been. Like I remember when journalists were supposed to be like unbiased. And I remember in middle school and high school having to take debate. And in debate, you would like hear the issue and you would then like pick out of the fishbowl of what side you were going to be. So no matter how you felt about the issue, you then had to either like be lucky enough to get the side you wanted, or you had to debate against something that you maybe personally didn't believe. But like that's a skill like there is like that skill is gone. I don't even know if they have debate class anymore, but sometimes when I'm arguing with these not so intelligent people, I'm like, you clearly didn't take debate because your brain can't even comprehend the fact that there is another viewpoint that you should be aware of. Like,
Yeah, and it's just there's to your point on the idea of the two party. Like I'm not a fan of the two party system, and I think for there to be a true chance for a third party would have to literally be a person walking door to door across the entire U.S. and meeting every single person, which is a massive undertaking. Hashtag Steve 2032. But like in all seriousness, there's there's so much money that goes out there in these very polarizing journalistic things, the news, the newsletters. Like I listen to a podcast every morning that gives me a little bit of hint of news, Morning Brew Daily, and it feels relatively neutral. And they more so just highlight things that happen versus have called opinions. And I think in 2021, my wife and I stopped listening to the news because I mean we got so enthralled in it with COVID, and it was like the old like all day, every day news, and it's just like man. And now when I watch the news, and it's like instead of getting information, I'm like, are they fucking serious right now? Like, is that really what this is what they're bringing up here right now? Okay, got it. This is why I don't watch it anymore. But
it's so bad, and it's so bad for our mental health. It's like literally designed to make you either dumb or angry. Dumb or angry. Like every everything that comes on, I'm like there is no like, "Oh, I'm so glad I learned about that this morning." It's literally like that was dumb or that made me angry. Like it's just so it's not what it used to be. And I know as I get older and I say that, every time I say that, I want to punch myself in the face because I'm like, I'm turning into my parents. But it's true. Like, it's just such a different climate. And I just feel like it's gone downhill. It's mostly like clickbait. Like, I feel like even the news stations are like that now, which is so sad. Like, it's all for views, it's all for ratings. It's just like the actual integrity is gone. And it's just not what it is. And I don't think that we're ever going to be able to have more than a two-party system in the United States because they have drawn the line and the division and the hate so deep that unless we have like another civil war, like I don't think it'll ever revert and go back. Like that's just how they want us. Like especially
the
it's just been
the
on track.
the optimist in me wants to believe it'll happen at some point in time, but it's going to take a lot. And it I don't know if civil war a lot, but it's going to take a lot where people are just finally tired of dealing with it because it's and part of opening this thing up is how much do these politicians truly impact our ability to call it be successful. Like I know my belief is not a whole lot. There's things that you have to navigate and deal with, and it definitely impacts your call it micro decision making along the way,
Yeah.
but your lack of success or success I don't believe, except for a very select few, which you can go look at the donor list on each party's thing to see who they are.
Yeah.
They're not able to impact your day to day that much. And also the things they're promising and want to do, there's the Congress and Senate and all these pieces that come into play as well that a majority of the time don't let it completely pass the way that it was said it would pass.
And that's the thing that kills me the most is because every 4 years, everybody wants to get really freaking loud about one thing. But when it's like local elections or we're doing those other ones, nobody talks about it. Half the people that will be yelling on social media about who you're voting for don't even know when to vote in the actual elections that would give them more power to then eventually control the one that they get loud about every 4 years. And that's another thing I hate about politics is that it's like people don't understand how it really works and like what the actual like people at the top are capable of doing, checks and balances and basic knowledge, and they forget that like if you truly want to make an impact and change some things, you got to start at the bottom because that takes it up the chain and there's actually more power that way. But instead they just get pissed about the presidential election every 4 years and forget everything else and don't vote for their city representatives or their mayors or their school board or anything like that. So I think politics is a sensitive subject, as it should be, because it gives us a false sense of control that we really don't have anyways. Like,
Yeah.
and my thing is like, we really aren't that divided. I don't know if it's just because I'm in the South or whatever, but if you like go to my gym, like, and walk in and like we're all there like working out together and happy and in, like, I don't know, and then you go to the coffee shop and the restaurants and it's just like we don't hate each other even though we have different political parties, but the news would love for you to believe that Republicans and Democrats can't be in the same room without punching each other in the face. Like,
Oh, that's fun. I'm just gonna one day I'm gonna walk in and like in a t-shirt and be like, here's who I voted for.
oh my
And
God.
just see what happens, like how many times I get punched in the face. I actually don't think I'll do that, but it would be entertaining like one day just
Yeah.
to have the world like everybody go out in America, wear a red or a blue t-shirt. That's it. And let's just see what happens. Because
Um, that's how gangs started, Steve. So
well, I mean, we're going that direction, but
in the Bloods, do you not remember this?
fair. Don't start a gang. That's not the goal here. But I think the reality is the red shirts and the blue shirts would all look at each other and kind of go move on about their business. And there'd be some dumb comments that don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Um because you put it out there, but I don't think the world would like light on fire that day. So,
100% wouldn't. And like that's one thing that I tell like the younger generation that I talk to, like I have a group chat and there's probably 8 of us in it and we've been in it together since high school. I went to high school in Maine. All right, I was like grew up in Maine even though I was born in the South and I came back to the South as soon as possible. And like the people in that group chat, we are all so different. We are all so different. We've been friends for freaking 20 years now, a little bit over that. And we make fun of each other's political viewpoint. But I promise you, if anybody in that group chat texted at any time, hey, I need your help. We are all over the country at this point, and every single one of us would drop what we were doing and go help that person that we have been friends with for 20 years, regardless if it's the one in the group chat who lets her kids have iPads, or if it's the one that voted for the Dems, or if it's the one that voted for the Republicans. We don't care that we think and live differently. We care about each other. And I think that's just like a view that has gotten so lost, and just like an actual like skill and a strength to have in 2024, that like it would be really cool if the younger generation stopped yelling at each other and just made friends, even though you might vote differently or think differently or whatever, and realize that at the end of the day we're all people and we were blessed with the power to think differently. That's like what makes us who we are. That's my rant on that. I hate that stuff. Like,
I'm gonna take your soapbox now, okay? No more soapbox for you. um, but well, yeah. So as we're kind of getting to the end of this, obviously, business coaches or coaches in general, you guys better be careful. And political parties and whatnot, Cam don't give a shit. Um, but when I think about the core of kind of my goal here, what this podcast is, and when I think of you and kind of the main reason why I was like, hey, I'd love to have you on here, it's really to help people that are maybe lost in a certain aspect of life, right? So health, wealth, and relationships would be those three avenues. It feels like on the relationship side of things, we probably hit this point home like, hey, go have conversations and be willing to talk about topics that maybe you disagree with other people that are willing to do the same thing, and you might learn and grow and make some new friends. But anything else you want to kind of lump into that bucket, and then we'll jump to those other two buckets as we're getting to the end.
No, I think that is honestly like the most important thing, with a side note, to like get off the screen and talk to people in person. Just like put the phone away, get off Facebook, like go interact with people in person. I don't even need to go into the mental health studies on why that's more beneficial, but it actually just feels better when you do it, to be in a real community. So if you don't have a community, find one immediately and go be a part of it and get off of all of this stuff and interact in person figure out who you are, find your people that have your back, and just like chill out on the news and screen time.
Fair. Um, all right, so moving on, health or wealth, which one you want to jump into next? What's the big takeaway or big thing you might leave somebody with?
Ooh, for wealth. It's not so I'm thinking how to put this easy. Money doesn't mean anything if you don't have the freedom to do what you want with it. So if you're chasing money, totally cool. Like I respect that hustle. Money, yeah, right? Freedom. Money chaser here personally. But I also have very strong boundaries and very clear goals. So when I get to that level of money I want, I have the freedom to do what I want with it. And for me, that looks like hanging out with my family, hanging out with my friends, traveling, and not being glued to a business that I feel like if I step out of for a week is going to explode.
Okay. I like it. All right. Last one, last bucket, health.
Health. Oh man. Okay. So
Learn to
obviously,
track macros so that they can get coaching with you.
yes, I mean, we coach busy women and females. And I am like busy women and moms. And so that's kind of like our forte. But health, honestly, remove the timeline and realize that like longevity is the goal. Like we are trying to increase the quality of your life at later years and in an environment where there are methods that are going to decrease your longevity and you're going to lose muscle mass and you're just going to try to go for the physical change instead of the actual health change. Just be really freaking careful because patience and persistence, and make sure that the goal isn't purely just face value and that it's actually going to fix things and get you to the healthiest version of yourself, which usually takes longer than we want it to.
Isn't that the truth? Most everything is I think maybe mine on the encapsulating that time frame thing. So both health and wealth, and relationships, to be honest, they are both very much compounding effects, and all three of them are very much compounding effects where you have to uh make a deposit today that is going to slowly grow over time. And if you're anything like me, your $100 that gives you your 70 cents, interest payment on the back end doesn't feel great.
Mhm.
But if you let it sit there and keep growing long enough, all of a sudden it's kind of impactful. So I think from a health and a wealth side of things, get in, commit to a big picture plan. Doesn't mean you can't see some initial wins and feel better and things like that out of the gates. But if you're like, hey, I want to look like Adonis, well, that's probably not 3 months away. That's probably more like 3 years away, and just be ready for that journey.
Yeah,
So
100%. And just like stop looking at other people's before and afters unless there's an additional after that shows them like a year after the first one. Because there's a lot of methods out there that make you think that this is the results you get. But if you check on those actual results a year down the road, they're back to where they were or worse off. So slow and steady wins the race. There's a book about that.
I love it. Well, Cam, if anybody wants to go and find you, social media, where's maybe the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so if you want to find me on Facebook and read all my hilarious statuses where people yell at
You
me and call me stupid,
totally should do it, by the way. Totally do it.
you can search Cam Michelle Brown, or if you do like the backslash thing, it's just Coach Cam Brown. Instagram, same thing, Coach Cam Brown. I make some reels that people go off in the comments about when I talk about how I don't like soda and stuff. So here we go.
All right, I love it. Well, Cam, I appreciate the time. You've been willing to come and hang out and chat on some topics that probably made at least one person uncomfortable. So
We got at least 20 with this one.
fair, I'll take it. Well, thank you so much, Cam. Have a fantastic day.
See you, Steve.